Hello, welcome to the Research Chat. I had some questions about how to play the game Oxygen Not Included, which I've been playing for the last couple of weeks as an educational problem-solving game. But I have been focusing on other things. I'm going to change the format of the channel, still posting the 2 videos each week, still having a gameplay run through, but instead of trying to handle anything else on it, I'm just going to go over how to play the game and look at it from an educational perspective. I like playing a lot of games, but some of them I think are more suited to logic and problem solving than necessarily other games. And then the content will still be in the beginning of the week. I'll do questions and answers either as we're doing this, or I'll do it in the content session in the next time, particularly if it needs a little more treatment or it has a more complicated answer. I like to have that whiteboard feeling. I guess it's the teacher in me, I guess. So we're going to do this and go through. I had a few questions about Oxygen Not Included and how to get started. Someone told me that they thought the game looked exciting but all too complicated for them to play. And I realized that I need to look at this from a view of somebody who doesn't necessarily play a lot of video games from it. So I'm just going to start a new game. I had a little test game that I started yesterday just to kind of practice this, but we're going to just start a new game here. I'm going to play on survival. And on the very first one, you're going to choose your asteroid that you start on. As you go to the right, they become harder. And then there's various idiosyncrasies that can occur on each asteroid, traits if you want for those asteroids, and they become quite difficult due to either a lack of water or a lack of natural resources. I'm going to do I guess about middle, which is this one. You don't have a lot of metals for it, so you're going to do a lot of, as they said, biological solutions for it. And on the traits here, what I usually do is just pick a number. I'm going to pick 6, and then I click out. You can click this and you can get your various ones. This is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to have slime molds, which means that my duplicates might become more sick. However, they also will usually have algae, which is really important for the creation of oxygen. It has these hard to dig boulders that are going to be blocking the path, but those boulders tend to be, while difficult to get through, and can make exploration a little more challenging, also will typically have materials that are really useful later on. And then it's going to be solid ice down at the bottom. So that will give us a different world. And if you ever want to see a stream and you want to put in, you can put in the same seed value and you'll get the same asteroid that I'm playing on or one of your YouTubers are on. Now, while I'm pretty good in the early to mid game, and now that I've said that, I will probably end up killing one right off in the bat, but I'm not good in the late game. There's people that do a really nice treatment, grind this game, and I've linked to that channel before. is really excellent at going through and explaining exactly what is a good strategy for doing this. But I'm going to be looking at this really from a perspective of, once we get started, how it can be helpful in educational settings. Now, you have 3 dupes that you start right in the beginning, and you can re-roll them this way to generate new ones. Generally, they have 1 positive trait, 1 negative trait, and skills will either be something where they have 1 positive high trait, they have 2 medium traits, and they could have 3 minor traits, skills really, I should say. Now, when I go off onto other channels, and I really like watching YouTube, I find that many people like to start with this 1 skill that's high in the beginning. I typically do not, because I like to have 3 skills here. It makes the beginning part a little more challenging because they're not really good at something. On the other hand, the end game becomes easier because it helps with their morale. And managing stress in the late game is somewhat of a challenge. You can also choose that you want a builder or somebody who knows how to cook or decorate or dig, or you have this list here and you can choose that. If you're new to the game, I wouldn't worry about that. I'd take someone you think you want to do. Make sure that you don't have, say, 3 people that can't do any research, or the game's going to end pretty quickly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set for myself the same limitation that I had in the beginning play, which is I will have 3 narcoleptics. Narcolepsy isn't a terrible trait. They tend to fall asleep sometimes. And so I will go to a narcoleptic. There we go. And so this one has advanced strength, and then periodically will fall asleep. This can be annoying, but it's not really a terrible thing. Every now and then you'll see one that has 2 positive traits, and usually they're pretty good because that means they're getting they're going to be able to do 2 things really well. They're going to get 2 buffs for 1 thing that's relatively negative. You only have to worry about the stress reaction if the stress gets out of control. If you start to run up in your stress, which is based on 100%, you end up at something like routinely 60, 70, 80%. That can happen in the late game if you're not careful. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to try to keep their stress low. And then an overjoyed response occurs when their morale gets very high. And again, in the early game, you really don't have to worry about that either. So we'll choose a narcoleptic here. This one's going to dig well. And it tells you that they have a faster digging speed. I'm not going to worry about the attack speed, but you don't have any actual fighting that you need to do. But there is a time where you'll have animals that are perhaps unwanted inside of your base, and you're going to either hunt them down for food, or you need to get them out of certain areas of your base. I'm not really planning to kill any animals, so except perhaps by accident, so therefore I'm not going to worry about that either. And I'll choose this one too, which has a bonus early in the morning. The characters can learn any skills provided that they don't have some sort of a negative trait down here that says they can't learn a particular task. Because I'm only going to have narcoleptics, they'll be able to pretty much learn any skill that they need. It's just some they're going to have a bonus and they're going to want to learn more than others. You can change their names by giving them a new name. Just click in here and give a name. I'm just going to go with the regular names that Clay Entertainment put in the beginning. And then you can name it different things down here. And I think we'll just call it Sleepy Town. And then we'll start. Now, in the upper left, there is a pause button. I'm going to put that on for a moment and just go through this interface. Now, because I did not take something like miscalculated pod location, for example, I'm pretty near, if not the exact center, I'm pretty near the center of this asteroid. And it's worth noting that you don't have to learn the entire interface all at once. I was on the phone with somebody who said that they looked at the video, but it looks real complicated. They don't know if they'd like a game like this. And I realized that for me, I play a lot of strategy games. I kind of like them. And so there's a lot of similarities in any strategy game that I play. And one of them is I don't worry about the whole interface. I just try to figure out what I need. I know this is going to be a time part. It's telling me these are the things that I need to get done first. These are technologies that I will be able to create and be able to use. Up here is this entire part up in the upper right is both resources that I have and ways to look at those resources. And down in the bottom right is my, that I moved the cursor down there, is these are the tools that are going to let me give directions to my duplicates. In reality, you do not have to worry in the beginning of the game with much about. Most of this is just information for you that's not necessarily crucial to getting started in the game. In the early game, probably the best thing to do is to be able to get to your water. You need to get your bathrooms built, that's your outhouses. And you need to address the oxygen problem. Now, the oxygen generators, we actually have, you start with an oxygen generator, but even if we build it, and we'll be able to get the metals as we go through. This, for instance, is metals of aluminum ore that'll allow us to start building things. And the igneous rock will allow us to start building our flooring and whatever with it. But the problem is going to be that there's not any algae in the starting biome. And I know that because I've played this map a few times. I should also point out I've never actually won with this map, and I don't expect to this time. I typically don't play video games to win, but I'll talk about that later. There's not exactly a tutorial in this game. There are little tutorial bars that will show up sometimes up here, and they have nice help panels and movies, but the game is really designed to help you explore and move around inside of the game. Try things out. And I think that's what makes it such a hallmark of a really good educational type of game, in that it gives you free reign to build and practice however you want. Of course, if you do something and you plan it incorrectly, your duplicates will die. You have to worry about water in the beginning, both for advanced research and for growing farms. We don't have much water here. That is a concern. We can use the keyboard commands of WASD. W will move us upwards. This is probably ethanol. Yes. S will move us downwards. And then A will move us to the side, as will D, which will move us to the other side. So it gives you an area to start with. And one of the things I'm going to have to address the fact is I just don't have very much water to start with. The way to generate oxygen is going to have to be with the oxyferns. They will generate oxygen, and the game does an approximation of how elements would react in the real world. Your oxygen is going to rise to the top of the base. If I find any pockets of hydrogen or helium, they're hydrogen, I think, is what's in the game. That's going to rise also into the top of the base, and carbon dioxide is heavier, it's going to sink into the base. In any given square, there, you're going to have one element. It would be too complicated for the game to do a mix of oxygen atmosphere like we actually have. So it does an approximation. There's really only two panels that we have to worry about in the beginning. One is your oxygen, and this is your oxygen that where they can breathe, and this is where they cannot. We have to take this and we have to get some oxygen running, which means a farm pretty early on. The other thing we have to watch is our heat. This is quite cold. It's in fact going to be too cold, and my dupes will get sick and eventually die if I make them go into the cold and operate in there a long time. But on the other hand, I can use that by taking something that's hot, such as there's some trees around on this map down in here and here. And if I take the wood-burning stove and put it up into the cold, not only will I heat this part right in the beginning, but I will also be able to have it up in the top. I was watching a very entertaining podcast, and I really enjoyed the, I said podcast, I meant YouTube cast, a very entertaining YouTube, but they put the heat down in the bottom of their base. Heat rises, same as it does in real life, and so what ended up happening over the course of the game is they slow cooked their entire base. So one good strategy for beginners is to put heat up here in the top of the base. Now in reality, I might find later a hot geyser which will have scalding water. Well, once I figure out how to get that water, I can run the pipe through a cold zone, it will cool the pipe down, and then the water will be a more usable temperature once I drop it where it needs to go. So that might address the water shortage, provided I can find the geyser. So let's get started here. And they have a little bit of stress in the beginning because they're just standing around with nothing to do and they're trapped. So I'm going to address the bathroom issue first and have them begin digging. If you're going to put machinery is typically you want 4 levels or 4 rows high, I guess. And there's ladders that will allow them to move between the levels. These Oxylite, when you find these in the world, they give off a little bit of oxygen, so the oxygen is not a gigantic problem right in the beginning part of the game. I'm going to put 3, actually I'll put 4 outhouses right in the beginning, and I'm going to put 2 sinks. I'm also going to put in a ladder a little bit further out. And I'm going to put a floor down simply because they'll move faster over the floor. If you don't get your toilets up soon enough, they end up going to the bathroom, and then you have to clean up that mess. Plus, that becomes a problem in the game because now you have a lot of dirty water. Now, we're going to have dirty water anyway, so we're going to have to eventually create a dirty water tank, but I don't want to deal with that right away. So let's try to prevent the accidents from happening. All right. While they're working here, we have the stress has gone down because they have something to do. We have some food here, and they'll eat generally 1,000 kilocalories or kcals per day per person. So I want to be able to get into the food, but I have some early food over here. And I think what we can do is speed this up a little bit so it doesn't take forever. So I'm going to move up the speed to the medium. If you're new to the game, I would really suggest that you start with going slow, because at medium speed, it's when a crisis happens, and there will be a crisis, you may not be able to react fast enough in time. I might be babbling to you guys, and then there's some sort of a problem that can occur. Okay, while they're finishing up there, I'm going to put this ladder up to the top. We're not going to have an exact level right now up here, but I will eventually have a level that's going to be up there, because I'm going to put my heat up here. And so I'm just going to put this across, and they'll be kind of digging that out. And then I'm also going to make an attempt that as they breathe, they're going to need carbon dioxide. I want that carbon dioxide to fall, and I want to be able to get down into this area here. Just dig that out a little bit so that the tree has full growth. And I'm also going to dig out that food for it. This is not growing because of the temperature for it. And if I look at my temperature, I see that it is actually quite cold here. This is a little bit special. It means that there's some sort of a resource that's going to be available here. I don't know what that resource is until I get into it. We'll see what it ends up being. And this is ethanol for later in the game to use as fuel. I'm also going to go this way. And that will allow me to get into the water area. After you've played a little bit, you'll start to learn some of the tricks that will help you out in being able to plan. And one of the things I really think is excellent about this game is it really starts to teach the importance of being able to plan ahead and anticipating the sort of problems that might occur. A lot of simulations that teach problem solving, problem solving is a transferable skill that most researchers will agree. So yes, this is a fun little game. I don't know that it was created for the purpose of a actual educational purpose, but it definitely has some educational components in being able to teach problem solving and able to teach what sort of things you might anticipate and how are you going to manage a crisis, because you'll invariably have a crisis of some sort, and how are you going to manage that. I have never actually won a game with oxygen not included, and I have now like 400 hours that I've put into the game all told, and I just find it to be a really entertaining game that I want to sit down and I want to play an hour here or there, and you can save it and then pick it up later. So I know some people will play this game and they'll sit and they'll play it for 4, 5, 6 hours, and I think that's great. I don't really have a problem with that. But there's games that I play for 5, 6 hours at a time. I can't be having a problem with that. But it is but this isn't necessarily one of those that I actually play like that. On the other hand, it's very nice because there's no save points that you exactly have to do. You just kind of do as much as you choose to do, and get to explore the world. And I really like games that I just get to explore the world, check out what's there, solve problems, and it's games like this, or there's the simulation survival game of Subnautica, which has a lot of exploration and problem solving as well, which is another game which is just kind of fun to do, fun to explore, and has those problem solving components. Now my duplicates have moved over into this area, so I'm going to help them out here and have them start building a water tank. I'm going to assume that we can find some more water in this game. And I'm going to extend the floor out here, and I'll just leave this stuff here. I want to leave the oxygen there, and here. They're going to need to get into the I have a pump here for it. If I was to come in, you can see where the pump will have its pipe go down to. There's no point in making a super deep tank in this game. The pump pipe only goes down 4. So to go down 6 or 7 means you have unreachable water, and then you have to build another pump down later. I typically I like to have a little more water than this, but I do typically put my make my pumps only for high. So if I have a deep water well at some point, I'll actually end up just not changing the shape so that I can use all the water in the game. Now they're stressed because I'm making them go down into the water. Their stress can rise because they don't want to go down into the water all the time. But right now they're filling up, probably the sinks would be my guess. That's the only thing, yes. So they have, if we were to come in here, you see that there's clean water here as they wash their hands, which will keep the germs from spreading through the base. That will turn green over here, and that means that the dirty water is there. The arrows are, as they pass through the sink, in the direction of the arrow, they wash their hands. To make it just a little bit faster, I can set it to one direction so that they're only going to wash their hands this way. That will also help, I think, with the water so that they're not wasting the water. But on the other hand, I don't want the germs to get all over the base as well. I can leave this all here. There's a harvest plants button over here. And I'm going to tell them they can harvest this wood and harvest those plants. and this one. And then when the plant is ready, they'll come and they'll collect food off of these guys, and they'll collect wood off of this guy, which I'll later need, and the oxygen. Now, I know that many people who play this game will start with a science station right in the beginning. And I understand it. I mean, it's a good thing to have. But I'm actually not going to do that. I'm going to give them a spot to sleep. So I'm going to create a level here of a spot to sleep. Now, when you're creating a spot to sleep, understanding that these duplicants will, if you put the beds close together and they have something like snores loudly, they'll wake each other up, their stress will go up, and they're not going to be effective the next day because they didn't sleep very well. And maybe some of you can empathize with them and be like, yes, I need my sleep in order to have a nice productive day the next time. So what I have found typically works is I give them enough spots, so I'll go 4 full spaces, and I'm going to put in a set of bedrooms. And they will each get their own little bedroom. Now, they don't need a, eventually perhaps their own toilets and showers and everything, but we're going to go with the bathroom being good, but I also want to give them their own little bedrooms here. And the reason that you want to have the doors for it is on this panel here. You don't have to worry about it if you're new to it. I played several games before I even bothered to check it. They get a morale bonus for going in here. So every time they go in, they get a +1 bonus. Here we go. Because they have of that effects of morale, because it's a room that's isolated. And it could have been 3 high. I've got it 4 high, so I can put some decorations there so that they can feel happier later on. Because my group likes to sleep, we'll give them some beds. And I know that I created 4 beds, but when the next narcoleptic shows up at the printing pod, I want to be able to do that. They can't breathe right now, so they're having trouble working. They'll move automatically out to the breathing area, but it does mean that I have to start worrying about my breathing now. I'm going to put the farms down here, lower in the base, and a little more of the base has been revealed as they've gone out, and I see that I have some water here. So I think what I'm going to do is move this water down here. So I'll try to create some sort of little like sluice gate here that will let me get this down. So I think I'll start working on that next. Let's see, however, here. In the achievements, because I have 1 toilet and bed for each duplicate, I get an achievement. One thing that I have told people before who were interested in the game and starting is if you fill out the achievements and you work on trying to get these achievements, you'll end up eventually winning the game for this. So there's that, and you can choose a blueprint. You can turn off care packages. We have the standard default. You get a care package. I want to see, do we have 2 negatives or 1 positive? Oh, good. But none of them are narcoleptic, so we're just going to take Rost. Okay. And then I think what we'll do is, because I'm concerned about the water, I'm going to create a little area that they can walk in. They can jump across 1 and they can get 2 high. So I'll use this to here. Actually, we'll take all of that. We want to give them a downward little bit. So as they dig this out, this water should come down into here. Otherwise, you can create a pump when we have plumbing and come in. That was our achievement. We've already looked at it, and they're telling me that I still have to set up some farms and food sources, which, yes, I do need to do that. They can also sleep down here nicely. You can set up schedules and priorities. I'm not going to worry about that now. I really don't worry about it till I get out to about 6 duplicants. And I don't know when that will happen in this game. I feel bad when they die because it's, I mean, I'm the manager. I ended up killing them here with poor management skills, and so I always feel bad for them when that happens. For myself, until I have addressed their bedrooms and bathrooms and made sure that I can get like something like the water together, I don't worry too much about the research stations. In my games, I find that by mid-game, I've usually researched most of the technologies, except for some of the very high-end ones. And so researching is not one of the bigger problems that I have in my games. I do know that some people who play this game do have trouble with that. We can, however, create a power wheel. I'll put it here. A battery and a science station. And since they're busy building that now, I'm going to come over into stations and put a research station. I would advise that if you're playing this game for the first time, or you're early and you only played it a few times, to just kind of look in the panels and see what it is. You can look in any panel. When you click on it, it will give you information about it. And when we later do plumbing and electric, you'll see, if I come here, it brings up little wiring diagrams that I can then see how this plant is going to work. This is for a power transformer, and then it tells me what the wires look like. So it gives me a little example here. They've been doing this, and so the water is coming down, filling up this tank. That lets me keep all my clean water in one area. You have the ability later in the game to clean dirty water into water that you can use, but it still has germs in it, and then they sometimes get sick. So securing a source of clean water and keeping it clean is usually a pretty good strategy to have. One of the problems that I have in the game is I like to assign them too many tasks, and then they never get anything done because I've given them too much to do. I'm going to open up by clicking on their panel here. I'm going to open up a research, and there's a lot of different research. I mean, this is their research tree. There's quite a bit. You can't get into any of the level 3 technologies, however, until after you have a science station. So we only have a research station right now. So I'm going to come up here, and I start usually with this research. And then I will typically do power and decorations and then farms. But in this particular map, because of the oxygen problems, I'm going to go to the farms next. So I'm going to get them to start building this so that we have a, they'll get a little entertainment thing here of a water cooler that they'll sit around and discuss their day, gossip. And then we need this advanced research capacity, which is the supercomputer, which requires water to work. And I know the supercomputer, I think it takes 3 So let's dig out this, and we'll create a little bit of flooring here as my water tank is filling up. Okay, I think the next thing that we're going to have to worry about is getting a farm together. The vertical farm that I tried out in the other playthrough when I was talking about research topics worked pretty well, and I think I'm going to put it right down here. Plants take between 2 and 3 high, so I'm going to come across, and I think we'll go with 4 levels. 4 levels sounds good. Okay. And that means to dig all of that out and come down here. While I'm down here, let's go over here and grab this food here. And in fact, we can harvest that. Now this is a big task, and it was going to take them a little while to do. And I think an argument could be made that it's not necessarily the most efficient way to do it, because while they're building this big task here, they're not getting any of the other stuff done that actually needs to get done. They're not setting up power, they're not, you know, it might be smarter to have a smaller farm, but I want to be able to run plumbing through this area. And so I don't want to have to keep going back into the plumbing for it. So I don't know. You'll have to kind of try it out on your own and say, I don't know if this is the way we want to do this. And I'm certainly not going to say this is the most efficient way to do it. We have some carbon dioxide here, so leave that plant as it is. These little things give a decor bonus. There's somewhere up here is a decor, and you'll see that where it's green is where the animals are, because the duplicants love to have animals and they like the printing pod. And now that I have this water here that has stopped flowing, I can use the mop command, and when they get to it, they'll mop up all this water into jars. I'm going to want that water put down into here, and so if I go to my plumbing panel, we can dump it into, this is a canister emptier, and I can dump it down into here. And I feel a little bit better with this water, but I still would like to find some more. There's a part of our there's a little story that's told through essentially email messages of what's happening and why you're in this predicament. And there's a bunch of algae I see over here, which will be very nice. Sadly, it's not over here, which will be very nice for once I get to it, for being able to produce oxygen. However, I have to go through this heat area to get it, and I see there's even more cold over here, and some other resource. So we'll deal with that later. I really enjoy finding games that have some sort of logic and puzzle capacity to them. I don't necessarily like puzzles like jigsaw puzzles all that much, but puzzles such as games and figuring out how things work and getting the little parts together, that I find is pretty good. We researched something, our water cooler. We'll get that set up then. We'll work on something for their stress. You have to be careful when you dig into big commands like this. The duplicants aren't that smart, and there's in-game reasons for it in universe, but if you're not careful, they'll get themselves into areas where they'll be trapped, and that's not always a good idea. because if they get trapped in there for a while, they can't eat, and then they end up dying. We'll just dig this whole area out, and we'll give them a, oops, we'll give them a little spot there. We'll turn that over into a recreation room. I think the water cooler will go nicely there. We'll put some other decorations in later, but that'll give them a place to hang out. I'm going to want to find eventually some airflow panels, and those airflow panels will let air come down through so that my carbon dioxide sits down here on this level. And they're doing pretty good digging it out. Remember before I said that it would start to fill with the green liquid, and that's over here, that as they go to it, this start will raise. I really like games that have the little graphic thing that says, you know, this is, if you want to zoom in, you can see that little extra touch. I think it's pretty nice. And they can get pretty funny later on, and it becomes more difficult to manage as you get more of them and the base becomes larger. You need to multitask in order to win through the game. I got one ladder that's going to go here. It's going to bottom out here. When I come down into this area, I don't want to go through the farms, I don't think. Although I could block this off and then just keep the ladder down. If you do a lot of jigsaw ladders where you have a ladder here and then you have another ladder here and another one over here, it just takes them longer to get to places, and then they can't get their stuff done because you've made your base too spread out. So I think what I'll do is I'll end up, and they mopped all this water up. I just haven't turned this on yet. Because when you turn it on, you have a choice of liquids, and right now the only liquid I have is clean water. But then if they get dirty water, which they eventually will do, they'll end up I just told them to put water there, and I don't want my dirty water ending up in my clean water, so I can just leave it there for the moment. If they need water, they'll come and get one of the jugs anyway. We'll go over to our research panel because they researched this out, and I'm actually going to go to farms. Now in the farm panel they have all these various things. This is your farm tiles that you can plant, but because we have the supercomputer, we're going to get that built, and then I'm going to go directly to the hydroponics farms. That way I don't have to be upgrading for it. I can just build right up at the top. Right from the beginning. So we'll do that, and over here the little hat means that they have a skill. You can actually assign hats to people, but right now Ren has a skill. They'll get a bonus. You can see here his morale of 2. If I give him, say, research, which I will, he'll go up to 3 for the bonus and have 1 that he needs. That's that orange, which is the stress. If I go to something like construction, which I'm also going to need, I don't get the bonus morale for it. So this way it gives me a little bit better. And this is why I like to have, in a more normal playthrough where I'm going to take all of one type. I like to have 3 just because it makes it easier to get to the top, because these sorts of things need a lot of morale. So let's go with research. And if you make a mistake with it, there's a device out there called the skill scrubber, and it allows you to reset all the skills on the duplicants. I'm going to put the supercomputer up. I think this is the skill scrubber. I'm not going to build it. I'm going to assume that I assign all my skills perfectly, which is a ridiculous assumption, but oh well. Not like I didn't talk about assumptions in my game or in the research channel here. I do kind of want to get into this. Well, let's do that. Let's come over here. They have these little pips there. I don't want to lose access to that water though, so at least temporarily, well, you know, I don't have to do it temporarily. Let me do this. I'll put a ladder up here and coming down here. I usually just put an airflow next to the ladders, and we'll put a little bit of a floor. I don't know if they'll bury that or not, but I don't want to risk it. Okay, we'll try to get this poor Pip who's kind of stuck, right? So we'll give them a temporary way across. I'll have to move that later. Okay, I have now, as I've said before, my biggest problem is I give too many tasks at once, and I have given them too many tasks at once. I'm also having a food issue. You can make them, there's a food machine that will make them, it's here, that will give them food, but it's basically dirt, and they don't like to eat it because, well, who wants to eat dirt? So instead, we'll try to get them into here because this has enough food for it that they'll be able to get this kind. And it will tell you, for instance, if you come over into properties, that it'll tell you a little bit about this this particular meal. So let me see what's going on here. We have a skills to assign, so we're going to have Max. I think I am going to give him cooking, and we'll have Camille do farming. For it, eventually I need a construction and a dig as well. 6 usually feels pretty good to me. I don't know if exactly what the ideal is. This is weird. I have 2 here. I'd really like the water, but I said I was going to take the narcoleptics. So I'm going to take this narcoleptic rather than 2 negatives. I really want that water though. Oh well. Alright. I should at least not be a liar for myself. And the new ones will come in with a skill that they can take. And the skill is, of course, grill, which I just assigned. Well, you can start building. And you notice their stress goes up at this one because I gave them a skill, not this. That's alright. The other one they can do is exosuit, but that's so far away. Alright, well. Okay. And we already have a bed for them. We're going to need another bed. So I will have to push maybe outside of the farms. When I come down into this area, maybe I'll give another set of bedrooms over here. I think that will work. In fact, what about this? What if I put my door for this here? Be a smaller break room, but then I can run a ladder down here. First, now I've assigned a massive amount of skills, and I'm starting to worry about their oxygen because it's starting to look pretty sad. So, I really don't want to open up down here. See, I have oxygen down here that I can open up into, but I don't want to do that because the carbon dioxide will come down into here. I will if I need to. I can always cap it off, but I don't know what's below the base. Heat, super cold. This is kind of a weird map. All right. Well, we'll see what they can do here. We just may have to hurry along. I don't want to build floors all the way across. I'm going to have to replace these floors, but I want to make sure they don't get trapped. So we'll have that. We're leaving all these clumps of stuff in the way that they've dug from, and we have to clean that up eventually as well. But I'm okay with this because if they get over into this area, there's some oxalate here which will put some oxygen out into the area, and there's also, we'll get some carbon dioxide down in here where there's a plant. These little dog-like things that are really pretty cute, they will plant seeds. And they give a morale boost, so that's good too. Oh, and we can dig out the food, which will address another problem. And we got a compost, which I should put up pretty soon. And some planters for rations, and this algae, if we need to, we can make a beeline over to this algae that's found, but I don't really want to do that yet. And one of our food things is done. So let's see if we can go directly up to the agriculture. We need the supercomputer, and we need somebody to be good at the research, which we have. It says we're missing something, which is water, but they'll get that and do that. You don't have direct control over them, so you just kind of have to tell them, and we can collapse these resources now so it's not in the way. I'm thinking that we're going to end here, and then next week what we'll do is we'll try to get the farms up and running, and that will solve one massive problem, which hopefully will be like a semi-permanent problem as the base grows. So I think what we'll do is we'll start there. You can let me know if this format works better for you. And as the channel's pretty new, it's only been around for about 3 weeks at this point. You can let me know what sort of things help out or not in the comments. If you found this to be interesting or something that you would like more of, you can give me a thumbs up for a like. And then after this playthrough, there's quite a few other simulation and problem-solving games that are used. I actually did my dissertation on games, using games as a way of keeping people learning in school. And I might end up talking to you about that at some time because it was interesting, the results, if not exactly what I expected. So we'll give an example of that, and I'm always interested in hearing from you guys. So give a comments below, or just give me a thumbs up if you liked it, and I look forward to you stopping by and visiting next week. Take care. Let me pause here.